Welcome to the On Trac podcast and to episode number 7, lucky number 7. On Trac is the show where we bring you all the latest and juiciest developments from the OriginTrail ecosystem and the verifiable internet for artificial intelligence that the OriginTrail technology is crucially enabling. This month, I was joined by a familiar face, OriginTrail co-founder Branimir, as well as a new face to the show, Trace Labs AI lead Marko. Together, we broke down the significance of some of the recent and upcoming developments in the OriginTrail ecosystem and decentralized knowledge graph, or DKG. We particularly focused in on the project's massive integration with European railways and what it will mean for scaling and for the ecosystem at large. Marko also shared an exciting sneak peek of how people can protect their IP and monetize their knowledge on the DKG through utilizing the upcoming Edge Nodes feature. And we had a healthy discussion regarding how the DKG and Edge Nodes can help solve some of the issues surrounding the wide-scale problem of deepfakes. All of this is steadily moving us forward in OriginTrail's mission to be a truly internet-scale protocol, and we also define just what that means, and to make the DKG available for any user, on any device, and on any chain. There's a lot to explore here, so let's not waste any more time. Here's episode 7 of the On Trac podcast, recorded live. So I guess, why don't we start by just having you introduce yourself, Marko. You're new to this podcast. We're very happy to have you here, like I said earlier. So who are you? I mean, what does it mean to be the AI lead at Trace Labs?
So I'm Marko, I'm the AI lead here. And I've been working here for about 2 years. And honestly, been a pretty cool journey. I've been working on everything from, blockchain to even some, UI stuff in the early days. And now mostly focusing on the AI solutions that we make. And it's pretty exciting. Also outside of, work, I'm pretty interested in AI. Especially, recently, like AI safety, even like stuff that's kind of not even related to development programming. Maybe this is a random fact, but some laws are even coming related to UI, to the Europe. So regarding my work, I mostly work on these solutions that we're building. And I think our goal in the, let's say, shorter term is to make it much easier for everyone to use the DKG, both in a scalability sense, so you can create more knowledge assets cheaply, more cheaply. And also to give you guys some great tools as, let's say, the barrier of entry. Like you need to know quite a bit to use the DKG right now, but we're going to make that much easier in the future. And I think that's what we're mainly focusing on right now. And can't wait to talk about this issue about deepfakes with you guys.
I'm just curious, sticking on you for a second. How do you feel about the kind of explosion in interest in AI that has happened over the last couple of years, ever since, ChatGPT, and I forget the name of the first image generator that went viral? Were you caught off guard? Were you sort of expecting that AI would kind of reach the apex that it's at currently?
Well, I guess it's a good question. I mean, initially I was quite surprised, probably like most of you guys. Honestly, the first day I remember, like when I used ChatGPT, I was like, this surely won't help me with my studies and stuff like that. And then it helped me like quite a bit. And from that day, I kind of realized that, AI is becoming a part of our lives. And I would say for me, it's making it easier, but I can also see how it might be able to go in a wrong direction, I guess. That's one of the things that we're trying to fight here at OriginTrail, like to make AI safe and to make it go in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. And we're definitely going to dive deep into that today. So before we get too in the weeds on the AI topics and the deepfakes and et cetera, I guess it's kind of impossible to avoid the AI topics and everything we talk about because it's permeating every aspect of our lives these days. But before we get into the deepfakes and some of the more exciting, juicy stuff that has not been revealed yet up until this podcast episode, so you're definitely going to want to stick around for that. I want to unpack maybe some of the things that have been revealed, announced, and launched since we last spoke, which was American Independence Day, July 4th. Since then, we've had initial paranet offerings go live, had this Polkabot IPO, on NeuroWeb. We've had OriginTrail get based. We have Neuro on base now. Obviously, I'm referring to the layer 2 base blockchain. We've had the European Gymnastics AI chatbot go live, and that's been fun to interact with and kind of keep up with during the Olympics. And I'm sure there's a lot more that I didn't mention in just those 3 examples that I gave. Obviously, we had the presentation yesterday about the railways, but I want to save that for a separate topic of discussion. But sort of, I guess maybe this is for a question for Branimir, but like, do you have any thoughts? What's your most exciting release been since we last spoke? Anything you want to highlight that's been particularly interesting of the things that I mentioned? What are you thinking about in terms of the past 2 months when you reflect on it?
First of all, hello everybody. I didn't get a chance to say hi and super happy to have you again with us. I hope you'll join this podcast. And yeah, there's been a lot of stuff going on the past 2 months. Kind of hard to capture what the 2 months, what fits in the 2 months, but I'll touch upon some of the topics. Obviously, we've been progressing quite a bit on the OriginTrail V8 roadmap, the big update that will bring quite a lot of interesting stuff, especially internet scale. So we're going to be getting quite a lot of new capacity to support some really, really exciting new projects. And on top of that, we're going to see a new version of knowledge assets. We're going to see new capabilities. And one of the most exciting ones is the edge node capability. So having the ability to run a node on any device. So basically any user, any device, any chain. And when we talk about that, there's been quite a lot of progress. So we're currently in stage 2 of the V8 roadmap. We've seen OriginTrail DKG launch on base. So that's been quite exciting. And there's already paranets that are going to be launching over there as well. You might have seen the DeSci paranet being talked about quite a lot. We also have seen Neuro being bridged to base. That happened just recently, last week, which is a major milestone because that is one of the infrastructural prerequisites for knowledge mining to go on base. So that also happened. In parallel, we've also been making quite a bit of progress on the NeuroWeb blockchain. So this week, we managed to release a major scalability boost, this asynchronous backing feature on the testnet. And together with it, also a bunch of other updates, including the support for ledger devices. So very soon, those will also be landing on the NeuroWeb mainnet. That's also another very exciting development that has been cooking for some time. And then basically, once we have that implemented, Neuro is going to go full decentralization mode. So we're going to be seeing collators and collator staking coming up. And that's basically the next thing in the roadmap. And yeah, there's been quite a lot of other things. Maybe Marko can pitch in with some of the implementations and new projects such as the Luigi and Polkabot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I would say that Luigi, the European Gymnastics chatbot, was quite cool because you don't often get to see our technology used, let's say, daily by fully ordinary people. And I guess for Luigi, it was quite interesting to see. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe some of you guys that know us, you showed your parents, friends, stuff like that, this chatbot, because it was actually useful. Like you could ask about results. Maybe you weren't following the Olympics the day before or something like that. And yeah, I'm also quite excited about the paranet on base, which would be the decentralized science paranet, which I think is a really cool thing. And decentralized science, I think, will become quite big. And I'm glad that we're, let's say, here early working on that. And yeah, one thing maybe that we didn't comment on is the webinar that you guys had yesterday. Maybe you can jump in here, Brano, about that.
Yeah, actually, that's quite a big development in the industry. And it's another one of those that really requires this internet scale. If you have not been there for the webinar yesterday, you'll be able to see the recording soon, but I can give a kind of a TLDR very quickly. So basically what we shown was a neurosymbolic AI system that enables anybody within the rail industry without the knowledge of crypto or any complexities to really chat with their entire train network. So we saw literally the question that was, hey, trains, which wheels should we change? ChatGPT-like UI, but it's actually not ChatGPT and Hood. The Hood is decentralized implemented generation. That was really powerful. Basically, it doesn't hallucinate. It gives you an answer based on real-time data that comes from sensors from all over Europe. And it's a really good showcase of why decentralization matters and is needed for any type of industry like this. Railways is just one. And also demonstration of scale is needed if you want to cover even just one provider of rail services. But naturally, if you want to expand to use cases like the digital product passport that we talked about yesterday, which is becoming a mandatory thing in Europe for most of products. But not just that, it's becoming kind of one of these network level optimizing type of use cases. We have a network of suppliers, a network of companies, a network of just different entities that work together. In this particular example, it's railways, right? Many railway providers around Europe specifically, and their suppliers and their IoT providers. To connect all of that and put it in one place is really not feasible in any possible way if you do it in a centralized way. And I like the comment from somebody on Twitter, I think his name was Adam, who mentioned that actually something like this was tried by Maersk and IBM some time ago with somewhat of a centralized blockchain, if you will, and it didn't succeed. And the project is basically cancelled because it just couldn't grow. So that's why you need something like OriginTrail. And there's a lot of very tangible details to that. It's very, very exciting because what we've seen yesterday is just the beginning of an upgrade to the rail system, which in its infancy is already punching hundreds of thousands of events in the rail knowledge graph that you could see Yuri particularly asking questions yesterday. And just to put this in perspective, like in most countries today, if you want to check if a wheel is okay, they do it a really old school way. Do you guys know what this way is? With a hammer. You take a hammer and you literally hit the wheel, and by the sound, you should be able to figure it out. You, as in, you are the person who is responsible for this. And so asking the entire fleet and getting a verifiable answer is quite a big step. We haven't seen anybody else do something like that in the entire rail industry. So it's a really, really exciting thing. And it's just basically warming up. There's going to be many, many more events. And this is just the several companies within the rail industry. Obviously, there's many more of them. Yeah, that's another very, very cool thing. Polkabot, I'm sure you guys have also been following the first initial paranet offering that basically is rewarding people for contributing knowledge in the Polkabot paranet. There's also other paranets coming up. So soon there will be more announced on that. But ultimately speaking, we're growing in terms of how many and which kinds of different users and use cases are using the DKG in this sense. And boy, we really need to to get to this scalability fast. So I'm super excited about asynchronous backing landing on NeuroWeb, which is tentatively planned for next week. I don't see that we'll have any problems to release it then. And then the V8 release, which is on its way. But yeah, I've been rambling for a while. So it's been an exciting 2 months for sure. Very, very exciting. What was your most exciting thing, Jonathan? What did you think was cool? Let me ask you some questions.
Ooh, good. Man, how the tables have turned. I've been enjoying knowledge mining, especially while the track payments are being incentivized by the Trace Labs team, or I don't know where the money's coming from, but while I don't have to pay the track itself to mint those knowledge assets. So I think for people who are listening who are interested in the concept or trying it out, I mean, now doing it through X, I know it's coming to Telegram soon. Now was the time to do it, to try it out. There's really no, in my opinion, excuse not to if it's something you're interested in. So yeah, that's been a lot of fun. I did really enjoy the digital product passports demonstration and talk yesterday. Since the webinar is available online, I won't spend too much time asking you about it. People can go watch it. But there was also a really interesting demonstration in there of a V8 edge node and what it might look like in a rail context with different rail providers, kind of keeping their private data, but also collaborating with other rail providers. I think that's super interesting. And yeah, I like that there's more ways now as an active community member and somebody who wants to participate in the ecosystem. I like that there are increasingly more and more ways for me as somebody who may not have the technical wherewithal to just run a node to still participate in the ecosystem, feel like I'm contributing to a cause that I find interesting and believe in as well, whether that be knowledge mining, track staking, and then soon neuro governance and collator staking, whatever exciting things I'll be able to participate in as well. So that would be my answer. Now, to put it back on you, Branimir, one thing you just mentioned, and you mentioned in a tweet yesterday also, is that with this railway project, there's going to be 100,000 events per day starting. And I believe you clarified that 1,000 events equals 1,000 individual, 100,000. 100,000, not 1,000. 100,000 individual events equals 100,000 individual knowledge assets as well. So that is a lot. And you were saying that it's going to require this big boost in scalability, which is coming soon. So that involves what? Asynchronous backing? Is that going to involve batch transactions? Something you mentioned in our last call. Batch minting of knowledge assets. What really needs to go into the OriginTrail ecosystem, the decentralized knowledge graph, to be able to pull off these monumental projects?
You're right. It's basically a number that we got on the rail industry implementation that was showcased yesterday, where they're starting with flagging around 100,000 events per day. But like I said, that's only a few initial entities, and that's only the beginning because they're ramping up basically to integrate much more of this data inside of the DKG so they can do these magical things like we saw yesterday. And essentially, what we're bringing with version 8 of OriginTrail is, if you will, knowledge assets version 2. So knowledge assets first came about in previous version, currently active version 6. And we've learned quite a bit during the implementations. So the new knowledge assets that we're actually going to see also somewhat demoed today, it's like a folder, like a file. You can put things inside, but like what's inside of a page of a book is a story, right? And there's characters inside and objects, and they interact with each other somehow. So you can think of kind of an old knowledge asset more like a book, and it's full of words. And the new knowledge assets are more like something like Harry Potter. Instead of one book being one knowledge asset, think of one book being hundreds or thousands of hundreds of thousands of knowledge assets, such as Harry Potter himself as a character, all the other characters, other related, the events that happened. Why does this happen? Is because we've learned that people kind of naturally think this way: one thing, one knowledge asset, versus a bunch of things in one knowledge asset. We've seen that across the industry, across pretty much every implementation. So the new knowledge assets are actually going to be much more powerful in that sense, because they will no longer be just containers of knowledge. They will be the knowledge itself. And that means that the entities will be directly represented. And you'll see that actually today. We have a cool demo to show. It indicates literally this. But what that means is you can use one transaction, batch mint a lot of them, actually a collection, an entire collection of knowledge assets, and you can do thousands of them in one transaction, basically increasing scale here by 1,000-fold in that sense. But that's not the only piece of the puzzle in the scalability. Like you mentioned, asynchronous backing is a very big piece of it. We need scale on NeuroWeb, not just to support the use cases on NeuroWeb, but also for knowledge mining. And then finally, it is something called random sampling. This is a new type of proof system. You might see in the blockchain space, there's a lot of this, L2, ZK proof, optimistic proof type of systems, and they solve for a different problem because it's about blockchains. Here we're talking about the decentralized knowledge graph. It's kind of a different type of data management thing. So we have a custom thing called random sampling, a custom proof system that actually increases scale quite a bit and makes the nodes have to work less. So that means a node in the DKG will be able to do less work and handle more knowledge in the version 8, and therefore we enable this internet scale. And then finally, what comes about is, as you mentioned, the edge node, the ability to run OriginTrail nodes, or really the DKG itself, on any device. So basically, you'll be able to run edge nodes on laptops, phones, but also in the cloud. And then together with edge nodes, you'll be able to run also core nodes. Core nodes are more like infrastructure nodes that are basically enterprise grade, highly available, and they support the network. They're the ones that are hosting the public knowledge graph. So all of these exciting things are going to bring the internet scale that we need. And one thing to one knowledge means effectively that we'll have the possibility to map every single object and every single event that happens anywhere in the world. Be that a rail event, like for example, a train passed through some place, or is it an event that happened on a blockchain, like something happened on Bitcoin network, or is it something in sports like gymnastics, the Luigi assistant, like pretty much any scientific discovery, you name it. But think of it as any event or any concept. And there's a lot of those. So we need to get there quickly so we can support all of the growing adoption of the DKG.
You use this expression, internet scale, which I've heard you use, I've had Tomasz use, I'm sure Ziga's used it. Like everybody at OriginTrail is using this expression, internet scale. Now, there are literally billions of devices connected to the internet in some way or form. There are billions of people who are using the internet in one way or form. So when you say internet scale, do you like literally mean that any single device that is connected to the internet theoretically could be, or maybe realistically, maybe theoretically isn't even the right word to use, but could be interfacing at some point in the future with the DKG in some way, shape, or form?
Absolutely. There is no reason why not to, if we can support the scale. And that's why this is the paramount goal, really, for V8. And yeah, basically think of anybody being able to install it and just plug into the network and start communicating. And because the infrastructure is decentralized and because it's on multiple different chains, it is able to do quite a lot. So in that particular regard, expanding to more devices also increases scalability. That will happen in a way where it preserves the current DKG and everything that's in it at the moment. So it's going to be very exciting. Basically, yes, you can think of billions of devices being connected and being able to exchange information. So a much bigger situation from what was demonstrated yesterday. Yesterday at the webinar, you were able to see the different nodes within the rail industry communicating together. And there's really no limitation in doing it over a network of thousands of hundreds of thousands of devices, which is ultimately the point, so that everybody will be able to share verifiable information in real time over the network.
I agree completely. And I would say right now, the main barriers for using the DKG are usability and the scalability. And I think both of those we are really trying to tackle on V8, and we are aware that those are the two main barriers. So I think once we launch V8, even I, as a, let's say, more of a regular user maybe than Brana, I would like to use the DKG. I mean, if it's scalable enough and if it's easy for me to use it, I'll for sure use it. I mean, I use it already, but I might use it like on a daily basis outside of work, And yeah, I think also it goes well with the, well, I guess the Metcalfe's effect, I guess that's how you call it, because the more knowledge we have on the DKG, the more you will be, let's say, inclined to use it and also to add your own data, I guess. So for example, we have this decentralized science paranet coming. Okay, I don't want to talk numbers, but we're going to have a bunch of science papers there for sure. And, if you hear that there's a lot of science papers related to neuroscience, I would be really interested to maybe not necessarily share, but integrate my own personal data with those science papers and somehow, gain some valuable insights into my, I don't know, neurological state, however you call it. But yeah, I hope I said it in a way that you understand what I meant.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the DeSci paranet that's coming up. And I know you guys are pretty tight-lipped about what exactly it's going to look like, and I totally understand that. But I can't help, my mind can't help but wonder about the possibilities of what sort of, assuming that they do knowledge mining, what sort of knowledge they would be looking for. If it's like science papers, like you mentioned, if it's personal health information, I really have no idea. And you can fill in some gaps if you want, if you feel like spilling some alpha. But that's sort of where my mind goes.
Yeah, maybe both. But yeah, that's, I guess, maybe some alpha, yeah, I guess, an idea. So first, we need to get the science papers, the science, like the already, let's say, done research into the graph. And once we have all the research in the graph, then it makes sense to basically give access to people to this knowledge and somehow for them. And this is where the edge nodes come in. So you'll be able to use your edge node, and your private data will basically be protected as it's stored only on your machine, but you will be able to interact with the data which is public on chain, and that is the science paper data. So basically you will be able to, let's say, enhance your personal data with the public data. And the public data is like, from scientists, so it must be useful, right?
Yeah, I certainly would believe so. I want to ask one more question before we move into the deepfakes. And I know we have a demonstration of sorts with all sorts of things that both of you have been hinting at that I don't even really know what's coming. So that's going to be a surprise and an excitement for me as well. But I'm curious your thoughts on if we have, well, the 100,000 assets per day is literally just the rail service knowledge assets that are being uploaded. So we have that. We have these paranets coming. The goal is to get to billions, trillions, literally trillions of knowledge assets. So do you have any thoughts on what that means for like the broader OriginTrail ecosystem? It sounds like there could be developing here. There will inevitably have to develop a whole ecosystem around all this stuff. Do you need more node runners to support all of this? I feel like it'll require a lot of space. I mean, staking is obviously going to be a massive opportunity going into the future, continuing into the future. Like, what does this mean if you are somebody who wants to get involved in OriginTrail and experiment and play around with the DKG? What does that mean for you as like as a user, I guess?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. It's when you mentioned the user, the big thing about infrastructure, such as the DKGs, there can be many different users. And what Marko said, I truly agree 200% with. We've been doing a lot of great things in the past, especially when it comes to enterprise adoption. But where we could definitely improve is making it easy to use the DKG, how it's used, any user on any device or any chain, and the ability to not just pick and like configure things the way you want, but having the ability to really build easily, and also not just build, like, just the regular person should be able to use the DKG. That means sometimes regular people are not just familiar with crypto. Sometimes people are not even fans of crypto. It can be a bad word even. But that's not to say that they could not be users. And I believe that we, as generally as an industry, we also need to do that more. We need to come closer to the regular person. We need to solve a problem for them. And with the DKG V8 and the edge nodes, this is becoming a reality. So everybody will be able to install basically an app on their phone or on their laptop and run this, and they will be able to inspect everything, by the way, that's happening. So you will see that your data, like Marko said, your health data, for example, stays on your computer. Nobody's sending it anywhere through some phone home system or backdoor thing. And it's truly yours. And not just that it's truly yours, you're plugged in directly into this vast knowledge bank that has been collected from the rest of the community. So if you're a kind of a regular user, you're going to be able to use it without a lot of hurdle. And that, I think, is a really, really important thing. Now, naturally, that will require not just some additional ways to reach those people, but also in terms of scale, very likely more people involved, more people staking for security, more tokens locked, probably very, very likely more nodes. And in that regard, it's going to be quite interesting where you have to see it pan out. And we're very excited about the testnet coming up very recently, because that is the key milestone of stage 2 of the V8 roadmap release. So yeah, you can basically imagine it going into the direction where any single possible object or thing or piece of content really becomes tagged or engraved, if you will, in the DKG in such a way that you're able to use it to determine the origin of the information, to determine if it's been somehow labeled, let's say potentially as a deepfake, as you mentioned, but also to use it for all kinds of things, like even monetize on it, which is a really, really cool one, and which we'll touch upon today in this demo as well. We're getting quite a lot of new stuff, and it will require additional engagement, more builders to build out all of the fancy cool things that can be built with it, which is why I'm really excited that we have the ChatDKG Inception program going. There's actually quite a lot of builders in there already, hacking and creating their own solutions on the DKG. Some of them, from what I believe, also going live relatively soon. And yeah, basically launching the edge nodes in a way where everybody can start and play around with them. And the edge node is advancing really, really fast. Now that you mentioned the Rail webinar yesterday for the digital product passport, actually I realized that the look of the node is kind of falling behind to where the product actually is. So today you're actually going to see an edge node that looks even cooler and kind of fresher. And Marko will be demonstrating something very exciting very soon, I guess.
Nice. Yeah, I want to feel like I'm in the Matrix. Like I'm like a cool hacker doing awesome computer stuff. I want to cosplay. Let's shift into this demonstration. So my understanding is this demo is related to deepfakes, which I assume that most people who are watching this or listening to this know what a deepfake is, but just in case you don't, it's sort of like a falsified representation of somebody. It's like taking somebody's likeness, their voice, their image, their face, and producing a piece of content that makes it look like they are actually in it, they're actually talking, and they're the ones who are in it, but it's not actually them. It's typically generated by AI or some other sort of technology. So that's what a deepfake is. And they have certainly become quite the hot topic in recent months, especially, but even years. And they've gotten quite more advanced, and they're affecting everybody from celebrities who are having, and regular people who are having inappropriate videos or images generated with their likeness. It's affecting people who are being scammed because they are thinking that some celebrity or politician or whoever that they admire and trust is selling them something when they're not actually doing it. I keep getting these ads on YouTube, and I don't know why. Maybe this is exposing myself, but these ads on YouTube for products and they use Joe Rogan's voice. It's obviously not actually him, but they use the voice of Joe Rogan to make it sound like Joe Rogan is endorsing this in-ear headphone or whatever, which clearly he's not doing. So they are clearly becoming a problem, but they clearly already are a problem. So right now they are, if you're kind of savvy, technologically savvy, you know to look out for it. You can still typically tell if something is a deepfake or not, but it's also only a matter of time before it becomes increasingly more and more difficult to tell whether something is legitimately the person that it's representing or not. So all this to say, and all this to ask, what is OriginTrail doing? What will OriginTrail be doing to help us rectify this issue?
Okay, I'll jump in right now with the demo. And first thing, I will share the screen. What we will be showing basically is a demo, which is basically 2 edge nodes that I have running on my device. This basically demonstrates how you can properly own your images, I would say. And it ties in well with the topic of deepfakes, because this way your images will be mostly protected. And also it will showcase, I guess, an idea about how you can create a marketplace using the DKG and how it will basically protect people's things that they own, in this case, images. Yeah, what we will be showing here is a revamped EdgeNode UI. So if any of you guys from the community have any feedback, feel free to pop into the Discord or Telegram and tag us. But because we're showing something different, both from yesterday and from the last podcast. So one thing that we've been experimenting with here is basically that you can upload your knowledge assets via the chat tab. And the first thing I'll do is I'll upload my, let's say, profile picture, which is, I guess, Bran in this case, because we're acting like this is his node. So I'm just going to write like create a knowledge asset that represents my profile. And it's going to get created. Now I want to put my whole gallery on the DKG. And this is where the scalability improvements come into play. So I think there's like 400 images here. And I'm going to try to select them all. I will create the whole collection, the gallery. And yeah, I'm just going to write it. I create a knowledge asset that represents my gallery. And we're going to show you that this is done in the background on one of the nodes. And yeah, so this is happening right now. And I'm actually pretty sure even that this node doesn't have the latest, I mean, this is a local node, but it doesn't have the latest updates, such as like asynchronous backing and stuff like that. So we're expecting it to even be more quick. But as you can see, we needed like 12 seconds for 400 knowledge assets, which is pretty good. But I think we can expect it to be even quicker. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, what we did now is we uploaded these images. And not only that they're uploaded, they're also being analyzed, if you're wondering in what way. So as you can see, we uploaded the images from the previous DKG con. In some of these images, Bran is actually present, and in others, he's not. So one of the things that you can set up on your node, and this ties in with the deepfakes well, is that you will be able, I guess, to set up with your node, is that basically you can filter the images with yourself. So as you can see here, this is a new view, I guess, of the DKG Explorer. So if you guys like it, let us know. If you guys hate it, also let us know. But this might become DKG Explorer in the future. And as you can see, Brana is in all of these photos, and he wasn't in some of these photos that I showed previously. So yeah, we can explore this collection. As you can see, we have some cool animations here. This is the central image. It's connected to all of the other assets because, yeah, it's the central one. And that one was used for similarity between these photos. You can see Brana playing music here. And yeah, what we can do here is search for, I don't know, I like image 195, or maybe this one. Actually, wait, let's go 195. And if I want, I will mark this one for sale, but I need to do it via the chat interface. That's why I got confused. And I also want to do, let's say, 2002. Not 2000, 202. I like this one. So what we can do here, I mean, not exactly here, but in the chat interface, is we can basically tell the edge node which images we want to put on the marketplace. And then the other user, who also uses an edge node, will be able to see these knowledge assets. So the explanation here is all these images are private initially, but when you basically want to sell them, you can make them kind of public. But why am I saying kind of public and not actually public? Because they will be watermarked so that you cannot actually, just download this image from the DKG and use it as if you were Brana. So until you pay him, you will not be able to use it. And yeah, I'm just going to do that in the chat. So please mark these 2 images for sale. And it's doing that. And yeah, it created basically a knowledge asset which represents the listing, I guess. So you can think of it as like when you sell an NFT on OpenSea or something like that. And yeah, I have this other edge node. And in this one, we will be able to see, well, I guess for now we see all the images, but we see the ones that are being sold because they have this watermark thing. Yeah, the idea here is you cannot view this image. You can download it, but there's a watermark. So we already connected our wallet. And yeah, if we want to buy it, we can click buy. We are now actually allowed to use it. So this is how we basically envision that people can create a marketplace on the DKG or something of that sort. And yeah, now we can actually view the image, we can save it, we can use it. And the idea is, we're not only building this for people just to sell images. The idea here is a lot of people in the future will train their AI models. And as you know, some of the companies kind of take your data and train the AI models on them. But what we want to bring to people here is, now I bought this image from Brana and now I can use this image to train an AI model. I didn't steal it from him. It was a fair exchange. Like he gave me an image to train my AI model and, he got some tokens. So yeah, I would say that's it. I'll also buy this one because why not? And if I wasn't clear, feel free to ask me some questions or fill in.
That's a really expensive one. I really love it. I look my best there.
It's worth every penny, worth every track.
Totally. It's memeable. It's very memeable. Oh, awesome, Marko. Perhaps to add on that, so what you've seen, although looks cool from the looks of it, has some, let's say, features built in that might not be obvious at first, especially, let's say, for the crypto audience. And you might have seen up in the upper right corner, there was a base name, which is basically an ENS type of system on the base blockchain, but any ENS is also supported, any type of system like that. And with it, obviously, there's a key or wallet associated. And what I'm trying to basically point at, there's a way to do all of this interaction without actually necessarily having to, increase allowance every time, click on your wallets. And that's amazing if you're a non-crypto person, somebody who's not used to this. And I don't know what your opinion is, but even like me, I've been around the industry for quite some time, since 2016. And honestly, our UX in like industry-wide still sucks, and we expect people to do too much. So here in this demo, what you actually seen is the edge node has a wallet of its own, which you pre-fill. You tell it, here you go, have some tokens, have some track, have some ETH, have whatever you need. And then it does all of the stuff under the hood. So it signs it for you. You don't have to use it this way. There's a way to disable this feature. You can still have your wallets pop up if you want. So it's not forcing you to use a software wallet, but you can. Not just that, you can use things like smart wallets from Coinbase, for example, on Base. Really improves this UX compared to, let's say, some traditional wallet that we're used to. So that's something that happened under the hood. And what you've seen is really a knowledge marketplace scenario. So uploading an image and seeing public version of it that's watermarked, so public knowledge asset, while the private part of that knowledge asset is actually the image itself that's not watermarked, and that you're able to purchase with basically one transaction. So for those of you who've been following that line within the OriginTrail ecosystem, it's coming in version 8, and you're going to be able to basically monetize your data. Like Marko, not Vlad, mentioned this. I really like particularly the use case where you observe this as annotated, basically AI-ready data. So knowledge assets, you don't just have to query knowledge from them and interact with them. You can find annotated images such as, give me images that, I don't know, Brana is in them. And then you can fine tune a model that's running locally on your edge node, let's say a visual model, and then you can use it for all kinds of different things, especially the deepfake problem that we started this whole demo with. I mean, I agree with you 100, 200%. I think it's going to be the problem of this century. It already is. Like, misinformation is already a huge problem. We mentioned, you said it, you believe something that scientists put in the papers, right? Not everybody does anymore, right? You know, well, I mean, COVID was a big revealer. Like there's, and I totally get it. I get why people are skeptical because, well, how do you really trust any information? And today, if you are able to see, yesterday I saw probably the best deepfake ever. I don't know if you've seen like Joe Biden, like from a wheelchair shooting a gun into people and Trump robbing something. It looks so good. It's crazy. We're just days away from potential, who knows what, global escalation because somebody gets tricked. And I mean, I could totally see in the future people like crypto's full of scams, right? Imagine jumping on a video call with me, but it's actually not me. It's some form of deepfake AI that's, you know, gonna try to trick you to whatever, send them to some track or something. Disclaimer: we'll never ask you to send us any wallets or track. So what I'm trying to say is the way to tackle this, the way is to really use knowledge assets and use them so to annotate the information and say, this is real. This is the real stuff. This is I as Brana with my base name, for example, or my ENS name, or a similar service from NeuroWeb can sign the content that's mine, but I can also label the content that's fake and that represents me. So let's say you upload a knowledge asset, you create a knowledge asset on the DKG, some deep fake of me, like, I don't know, doing ballet or something, which of course I won't. But let's say I could come and I could create another knowledge asset that comes from me. You can see it because it's associated with my identity. And I can say, this is deepfake of me. And when you do actually run into it, you're able to see it. Kind of like you see community notes on Twitter, but like much more powerful and much more permissionless. So that is something that we enable with DKG V8, and it's going to be a total societal problem, especially when it comes to IP. So you'll be able to protect your IP as well with DKG and with creating knowledge assets in many different ways, not just the way we've seen today. But one of the cool ways you've seen today is that you don't no longer have to use an SDK or just like a special upload interface. You can literally talk with the edge nodes AI with the local model, and it's going to understand that you're trying to create a knowledge asset, that you're trying to label it as for sale, that, you know, you can ask, is this a deep fake? And it might find, hey, you know, the guy who's actually in the picture labeled it as a deep fake, and you can check it here. It's going to be very powerful, very, very soon. I'm super excited to demonstrate that as well as soon as we have testnet live. And like Marko said, we'd love to get feedback from you folks, both on the new look that you've seen just now, but also generally on the flow. And if you see something that we can improve, the sooner you tell us, the more time we have to do this. So it will be very, very exciting to hear your thoughts and how it looks like. But yeah, also good job, Marko. This looks really, really impressive. I haven't seen it before, this podcast in this form, so it looks really, really exciting. I especially like the new Explorer that you can actually go in 3D. Very good job.
Thanks. Yeah, good job to everyone from the team, actually.
Yeah, thank you for the demonstration. It's always, I think, helpful for these sort of concepts that can feel a bit abstract or technical at times to see the visual demonstration of if I go into my edge node and I upload the images and I can sort them this way. So yeah, I think it was super helpful. And I also just want to have it on the record, Brana, that I think you would make a lovely ballet dancer. So I think you should not give up on your dreams. And if that's what you want to do, I think you should pursue it.
Thank you. Thanks so much, sir. You should create a knowledge asset out of that.
I have a couple of, I guess, follow-up questions. Branimir may have sort of answered one of these already, but so let's say I'm scrolling social media. Obviously, we're very early in this concept of this. I mean, it's not even live yet, what you just demonstrated. But once it is live and people are using it, let's say I'm scrolling social media, and I come across this photo of Branimir in a tutu dancing ballet, and I'm like, is this real? Did he actually follow through on his dreams? Or is this just a joke that somebody's playing? The idea is that then I would be able to, copy and paste the image, go to chat DKG or whatever interface, drop it in there and ask, has this been certified by Branimir as being legit? And it would spit me back the results, yes or no. Is that kind of what a future use case might look like?
Yeah, maybe I can even answer this one. So perhaps, but maybe it would be even simpler. Like, well, maybe we merge with the internet or something. Of course, it's a bit of a joke, but I mean, maybe you never know. But yeah, imagine if you could browse through the whole DKG and basically have these community notes, similar stuff. So let's say Brana, obviously he doesn't have time himself to go and, look at all these deepfakes potentially of him and stuff like that. But there's a bunch of innovations in the blockchain space, for example, like verifiable credentials. So Brana could, I don't know, I mean, maybe not hire, but maybe gives his friends verifiable credentials. And whenever they see a deepfake image of Brana, they could mark it as that. And, other people would see, oh, so Brana marked this image as deepfake. It's probably not real, right? Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm too optimistic, but, if all of this gets applied to the internet, like, do you even need to sue people for deepfakes and stuff like that? Like, imagine if you're a celebrity and people actually who you gave permission to mark these deepfakes as deepfakes, and then everyone in the world will be able to see that you mark this as deepfake. So if all of this innovation gets, let's say, implemented together, it could be really a huge thing. So basically yes, but maybe even better. That's the answer.
Yeah, I think it'd be cool. This would obviously take a lot of stuff on the back end, but to integrate with a browser, let's say, where I could just right click on an image that I see scrolling social media, and there'd be a thing there like, is this image real or not? And then I click it and it pulls up the relevant knowledge asset. Yes, this is real. No, nothing found. This might be a deepfake. I think that would be kind of cool as well. Or like you said, on community notes, like if Twitter X were to implement something like this, where it on the back end searches the DKG for you, or however it works, and then it gives you like a note, this image is likely a deepfake, proceed with caution, or whatever the language would be.
Exactly, yeah, I really like the idea. Like perhaps you have an extension, you select some text on the internet, it browses the DKG for similar text or similar stuff, and then you can see whether there's a knowledge asset which marks it as a deepfake, or I don't know. We don't even have to talk about deepfakes. We can talk about fake news or whatever they call it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really good idea, Jonathan. This is why we really like to talk with the community. You guys also have great ideas. It's not only us.
Yeah, drop some in the chat on YouTube if you're watching and you have any interesting ideas.
Exactly.
If I'm an AI developer, the incentive for tapping into these quote unquote AI ready knowledge bases is that I can down the line avoid these sort of IP and copyright infringement lawsuits and cases and troubles that we're seeing now. You're getting a lot of writers and filmmakers and artists suing a lot of these AI developers, alleging that they've stolen their work. Is this sort of like a protection measure for the AI builder who wants to avoid those issues?
Well, yeah, perhaps maybe you can never avoid them, but I'm optimistic. Possibly you could.
One thing you get currently is if you're let's say you're using some form of AI, you're training an AI, or it's really hard to sift through what data is okay or not to use. Obviously, like Marko said, people don't do it manually. So, for example, when X AI, when they trained Grok, they trained it on massive amounts of data available on the internet and obviously on Twitter. Obviously, they couldn't go through it by hand, so they used software. So when you use software at scale, you need some ways, you need tools to distinguish what's real or not. And what turned out for them is actually they had this problem of model collapse happen to them quite a bit. They wrote about it extensively. They ended up having to throw a lot of people at the problem to sift through, the junk. So whatever they labeled as junk, which is also kind of a naturally biased activity, right? Having that said, having the ability to label information with even the label having a certain owner, issuer, so that you know that I labeled the deepfake of mine, as Brana with my key. That is very valuable information. It's something that you can use to filter, right? So imagine you're training an AI and you're able to tap into the DKG and get all of the right data in and not the bad data inside. You avoid model collapse, the big problem. So that means that your models don't deteriorate. At the same time, you're able to properly attribute or even compensate those whose data you're using. So, for example, images, purchasing an image of me and using it in your training, the way it actually works, it will create a knowledge asset that said, this guy purchased Brana's image. There's a knowledge asset, a record of this happening, making it also part of the trail of activity of this particular knowledge asset. Obviously, sending tokens as a compensatory transaction, but like all of this is written in the DKG, so you can see it. You can see Jonathan brought Brana's image, and he bought it so that he can train his model. There's no better way to protect any type of content and IP other than this. So having that said, you as a creator, for example, Jonathan, as a musician, you're able to basically create knowledge assets out of your music or even out of the stems of your music, the samples. And then you're able to do all kinds of interesting things from them. For example, I'm going to be able to find your music perhaps Shazam-like way. I could find it per sound or per similarity, or I could also use it, let's say, in my own music by purchasing some elements from it, and that purchase transaction being obvious and visible within the DKG. We can do a lot. That's my opinion. Will it protect the whole world? Well, that depends if they plug into the DKG, but they better, because it's going to be one of few, if the only tool that's going to be able to do this much with this much freedom, especially in Web3. A lot of projects talk about multi-chain, but are they really? And are they designed agnostically in such a way that you can do the same operation on a different chain, the one you pick? I wouldn't say so, but it's kind of a wide statement. So with the DKG, you can do so. You can follow standardized technologies. So anybody who's already building in the knowledge graph space just picks up their own usual knowledge graph tooling. Voila, it works. Anybody in an industry like rail industry, they're using certain standards like GS1 standards. You just plug it in, it works. That's a really powerful thing. So we're going to make it so that it's super easy, super scalable, that you'll kind of be dumb to pick something else. That's my personal goal, if you will.
So I want to pivot into some of these audience questions that we got submitted in advance, because there are some here that are about the edge nodes. So let's start with those. Somebody asks about what it looks like the practicality of running an edge node, what it will look like. Does it have to be on, quote unquote, 24/7, always connected to the internet? Like, is it going to be an app that you download to your phone? Yeah, like what exactly will this look like on the user end when it's released in terms of operating and installing it?
Oh, that's a good question. So again, the idea here is to make it very easy so that you basically download, install, and run it. But it won't have to run 24/7. I understand where the question comes from. I think it comes from the current node running community, which is trying to maximize the uptime of their core nodes, essentially. These are going to become core nodes in version 8. So I might explain with an analogy. Just like you have, I don't know, Telegram or some form of an app for communication, for chat, you're kind of always online. Well, you're not 24/7 because your phone sometimes goes out of battery or loses internet or whatever. But when you do get back online, you pick up all these messages, right? They all come to you eventually. So you can think of it in a very similar way like this. Your edge node will be like a Telegram app on your phone, and you're going to be able to do all these cool things. And then if it's online, well, okay, it's unreachable for a moment. So this might not allow certain things to happen. Somebody won't be able to talk to you at that moment or talk to your knowledge graph. But as soon as you're back up, they will. And if you need 24/7 edge node because you're a builder, then you can do it. You can deploy an edge node on the cloud as well. There is no requirement that it has to be an edge device like a phone. It can be a cloud device as well. So basically, it will be streamlined for kind of the regular user, but if you're a builder, you're going to be able to configure pretty much anything within the node and build on top of it and build for it.
Got you. Just to backtrack a little bit here, we had a comment come in on YouTube, a question come in on YouTube, asking, I guess, for more clarification on the how exactly deepfakes will be prevented and whether or not the self-claim feature and system can be abused.
Yeah, I can start with this one. So first thing, I guess the user was a bit confused, how this demo actually displays how we will use the DKG to battle deepfakes. And I do agree with that. Maybe the intro was a bit too focused on the deepfake part. Like the demo itself was more so demonstrating this marketplace possibility, but we also did talk about the deepfakes after. But the real, let's say, chunk of this question, and I think the user has a good point. So let's say, Brano, you did something embarrassing. He gave an example of you doing coke at a party. I hope that won't happen. But what he's saying is basically that you could technically abuse the system and tell all your friends to mark it as a deepfake, even though it's not a deepfake. Yeah, I can see that. So one thing that we could probably do is, aside of this, let's say, verifiable credential voting and stuff like that, the normal users, like on Twitter for community notes, could also, vote themselves. And, if there's a similar number of, let's say, votes, or whether it's a deepfake or not, then we can mark it as potentially a deepfake or something like that. And this ties in with what I said. It's too optimistic to believe that you can solve the whole deepfake problem in its entirety, right? But we can definitely help doing it. So this is an example where, if this really happened, you will probably have to go, I don't know, to court or something, and then I don't know. But you would make it easier definitely for people to mark some images as deepfakes, even though you could give them a bit of this, let's say, power to abuse it. But yeah, I would say it's not like we don't have countermeasures for abuse as well. Yeah, Brano, maybe you want to add something.
Yeah, one thing that maybe is also important here to mention, that you mentioned, the ultimate decision here is not on a single person or even the protocol to make. The protocol has to be neutral. That's one of the key principles we're building it from the start on, neutrality. So neutrality means whatever people vote around and put additional signal into the DKG through this information, such as, I think this is a deepfake, I think this is not a deepfake, and a bunch of stuff amasses effectively a lot of knowledge assets. Ultimately, whoever is viewing this graph gets to decide how they interpret this information. So you will not see the DKG Explorer counting votes and saying, there's 5 votes more for it's a deepfake, therefore it is, because it doesn't have to be. This is truth by voting of majority. It doesn't necessarily have to be that it's really true. So what I'm trying to say is that ultimately the infrastructure needs to be neutral, but it also needs to provide these key primitives. For example, without having the ability to know who created some entries in the DKG, some knowledge assets, you wouldn't even be able to sort of sort by relevance. For me, for example, if I see, let's say, photos of Marko posted by Marko's base name and photos of Marko posted by somebody else, I'd like his photos that he posted to show up higher on my search, if you will, Google search list, because he's the person in the photos themselves. And just kind of a very basic example. There's many more other examples, like in the rail industry. These parties obviously know each other, so the information they read, and they might even vote on certain measurements. For example, measurements of wheels, they get measured in different places. They can use consensus or kind of a voting-based system to get to some different result. But ultimately, it's up to them to decide how to understand this piece of information. But does the infrastructure solve the whole thing? It doesn't. It's kind of like electricity infrastructure. It provides a lot of these different things. You can plug in different devices, but then those devices on top solve some particular problems. So in this particular way, for particular industries and particular cases, there will likely be different applications that plug into the infrastructure and then create a way to tackle deep fakes. Because it's a different thing if it's a video deepfake or is it some misinformation in text. It's going to be exciting to see those develop. But without the key primitives, without having the ability to sign and own this knowledge, really own it in a private way, and then having the ability to connect it, provide context, and ultimately monetize it, these things are going to be hard to do. So with this auditability at scale, at the internet scale, is crucial in this particular way. But it doesn't solve every single problem in the world, like Marko said. That would be a little bit too naive to think.
Yeah, thank you both for expanding on that question a little bit there. To go back to some of these pre-submitted audience questions, sticking with edge nodes for the moment, question for Branimir, or either one of you, but when Branimir demoed an edge node the last podcast episode, which was quite a good one, so if you did not watch it, I recommend you go back and watch it if you want even more information on these edge nodes and the concept and the philosophy behind it. But DKG Lee, one of the two, says that in the demo, all of the information that you uploaded only created one UAL, Universal Asset Locator. So does this mean that all of the knowledge assets you upload in one batch get one UAL, or do they get separate UALs? Bit of a technical one.
Yeah, maybe I can take this one, and maybe to give a shorter and quicker answer, unlike the previous ones. But yeah, so you're not wrong. There was one UAL shown in the UI, but that's actually not the, let's say, knowledge asset UAL. That's the knowledge collection UAL, which is a new term that we'll be introducing. So as Brana said, knowledge assets will be these entities. And I think there we uploaded like 1.5 years of data from the Aura ring. So each day, or I'm not sure, maybe it does like 2 measurements a day, but let's say each day, like your measurements for each day were a single knowledge asset, but they were all bundled in this knowledge collection. And it's a bit of a better user experience because the knowledge collection has a UAL, and then these knowledge assets basically have a UAL that starts with the collection UAL. I mean, you guys will see it. I don't want to spoil it too much, but it did actually create only one UAL, but that's UAL of the collection. And all of the other knowledge assets created have different UALs.
Got you. And can you guys remind us when edge nodes are going to be coming? Is this like immediately as soon as V8 drops, we'll have edge nodes?
Yes, indeed. We're actually looking to launch, when we launch the testnet for V8 with random sampling and these features that we soon after enable downloading the beta version of the edge nodes. So you guys can take them from spin and, try to break them, give us feedback, all of that good stuff. So that's also going to be there soon. You might have seen that the UI has improved quite a bit and is moving on very quickly. Currently, like we said, we're onboarding the Inception program builders onto the edge nodes. So there's already people using it and generating feedback. And we're looking to expand that the next wave when it's more mature, which we're going to be relatively soon.
Very nice. So that was the answer to another one of the audience questions. So moving into paranets and knowledge mining, another exciting topic, as I mentioned earlier. Personally, you know what I'm trying to say, the most exciting topic for me personally as a regular Joe Schmo interacting with the DKG is the paranets and the knowledge mining. So Walter wants to know if there'll be any additional documentation coming regarding the mechanism, the word he used, between a paranet operator and knowledge miners, such as to make it clear like which knowledge can be mined. And Walter is mining, or wants to mine, through the software development kit, or SDK. And I guess wondering if there's any kind of going to be any documentation about using the SDK when it comes to between paranet operators and knowledge miners.
There's an update coming with more details on like really how you can both use the SDKs, but also how you can run paranet services that help you essentially build ways to protect the knowledge graph that you're building through the knowledge mining. One such way you can see for Polkabot deployed right now, it tries to understand which knowledge assets are related to Polkadot and which are not. Obviously, this doesn't work perfectly. It manages to sometimes even tell you that something, even though it is related to Polkadot, kind of doesn't figure it out. But the more knowledge inside of the Polkabot, basically knowledge graph, the better this will be, because it tries to figure out if something is already in the knowledge bank. So it's exciting. It shows the power of the network effect. The more knowledge you have, the better it is to understand if something should be in or not. So yeah, definitely there are going to be more docs on this. Polkabot is really the first IPO, and we really wanted to do it so that we can sort of, run into all of the troubles in this first baby steps of using it. So putting ourselves, who are the core developers, in kind of this user role. Mm-hmm. So we suffer the most in the beginning. We polish out all of the potential problems, and we push out more information, more guidelines how to do it. So that's definitely coming.
Mm-hmm. Pain is pleasure. So just embrace the pain.
Yes.
Will it be possible with paranets for paranet operators to share the revenue from any products or services they build atop a paranet with knowledge miners? So that let's say that some service they build, I don't know, maybe it's an AI, and they use one of the assets or they sell something, and if your knowledge asset is used in this service in some way, that you get a cut of the revenue. Is that something that they would be able to program into the paranet? And I guess to sort of combine this with a second question, what is an example of a business that could be built on top of a paranet?
Maybe we start with the second one. So anything that's really kind of a natural data business, which is really anything online when you think about it, you can imagine it as a good fit for a paranet. Anything where, that saying that if you're not paying for the product, you're the product, or you're paying with your data, right? So something like social networks like Facebook, things like that, that obviously they have a data-driven business model. Facebook sells it in this ad business model, which I know not a lot of us here in Web3 like. We're kind of generally opposed to that idea. But when you think of it, how it works in a way where they like have this huge knowledge base, and then they allow marketers to target people based on their interest or their history and so forth, or really their data. So think of paranets or products built on top of paranets as, you can build those types of products, but in the right way with the principles of privacy preserved ownership in a decentralized way with all of these things covered by the infrastructure. But then it also depends on what kind of product you're building on top. And obviously you need a business model, and in some way, part of that business model can be incentives for the knowledge miners, which are there on the infrastructure level implemented. And then for the paranet operator also is able to get certain pieces of incentives, which they can do with whatever they want. They can spend it, or they can decide to include it somehow in the product. So you might be able to effectively have the rewards that were earned by the paranet operator to fund some additional activities in the product potentially. So that can be either incentivizing knowledge miners, or can be incentivizing users, or can sponsor transactions, you name it. It's basically another type of infrastructure. It's just like electricity coming from your plug, and you, as a builder of paranet, you can plug in something and use that electricity for whatever fits your business model.
Got you. Moving on to staking, always a juicy topic.
Mm-hmm.
You've been hinting at, or OriginTrail's been hinting at, this idea of multi-chain staking for a little while now. Is there anything you're able to share about how exactly that'll work in the sort of technology that will enable it?
So multi-chain staking is a very exciting one. So the idea here is that we enable it to be much more easy to stake across different chains, but not just easy, that it also is able to reflect across, so that it's just much more abstracted. We're speaking with several teams and prototyping several different approaches. We cannot really share which all different tools or technologies are going to be potentially used. Part of it might be even some of these native multi-chain abstraction tools. But ultimately speaking, that is the direction to go in, is that we get to a point where you're able to essentially stake on a chain that you like, and that gets reflected, including all of the activities that are relevant for that gets, like, for example, withdrawing stake or similar, gets reflected across the network. By the way, we're also improving staking on the current network. There's certain not as major improvements as this multi-chain staking, but smaller ones, including a cancel withdrawal feature that's coming to them. Basically, it's been released to the network today. So this is news, but we haven't announced it yet because you cannot do it on the staking UI. We'll be able to do it tomorrow. So from tomorrow on, that's the plan. So basically, if you started withdrawing your stake and you decided you don't want to do it anymore, you can cancel it. No changes, basically. So small improvements like that are coming right away. But bigger improvements like multi-chain staking are lined up for the V8 launch and basically the period after it lands on the mainnet.
Mm-hmm. Got you. 2 more questions here, and then we can close things out for this another exciting episode of the On Trac podcast. How many, whichever one of you wants to take this, how many knowledge assets can be minted in one batch with V8, and does that save on costs for storage or transactions to batch mint?
We still haven't reached like a conclusion on like a precise number. You've seen 400 something images being created today. We're testing still, but it's likely in the thousands. And one transaction basically here being minting a knowledge asset collection. Imagine minting your entire collection of images from, let's say, a Mac Photos app in one transaction. And this obviously saves on transaction fees. Instead of 400 or 4,000 transactions, you have one. And the point of this one transaction is not only that it's just one transaction, it's better packaged than it was before. So we're using some additional improvements and techniques involving this random sampling, a method that I mentioned that packages this up nicely. For the node runners out there, there's a rehaul of this entire service agreement system, which is going to be basically bundling them together in ways where you're able to, at much more scale, also get your rewards out. So it's easier. It's not per knowledge asset, but rather, and per service agreement, rather per actually a larger group. So long story short, with the knowledge collections, you're going to be able to mint at least hundreds, but very likely in the thousands within one blockchain transaction, all the knowledge assets. And then these knowledge assets, obviously, depending on their size, are going to have certain size requirements on the nodes, which means that basically the same system though stays here as before. Like the more somebody uses the DKG, the more track they need. So effectively, the size is recuperated by the track at the same time. So you're going to be basically seeing, obviously with scalability, also improvements in cost. We expect to see that just as with any other blockchain system. So like, all of the L2s on Ethereum, for example, are generally cheaper than Ethereum in terms of transactions. So we can expect the price per knowledge asset to go down, which is also something that's very desirable, because ultimately we want people not to think in terms of, oh, I'm gonna use OriginTrail, it's gonna cost me a ton. No, it should be a no-brainer. It should be the cost should be non-prohibitive. Let's say it like that. So that it's more of a, I pay for my internet connection at home because it's $20 a month because I'm using the internet all the time, and it's a negligible cost compared to the value I get. So that is where we're heading with knowledge assets V2, essentially. So I hope that answers the question. I kind of lost track of my thought a little bit. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. I think you answered it. That you're not quite sure exactly how many knowledge assets can be minted in one batch, but it's expected to be quite high, and that it will also increase efficiency of minting these knowledge assets, and the price will go down, so cost will be saved.
We are going to play around with this on the testnet. So you guys were going to be able to try it out, actually. And we can even compete who's able to create more knowledge assets in one transaction. That would be really cool.
So the final question I have here is a question on scaling, another popular topic. So in NeuroWeb, obviously I know you've made a lot of improvements there, or OriginTrail has, to make it as scalable as possible. Polkadot has as well. Does Base have the same ability to scale as NeuroWeb does?
Not entirely sure, because I'm not very familiar with all of the details when it comes to Base architecture. But I do know a lot about NeuroWeb, and I can say that it can scale a lot. And we're not just going to scale it with asynchronous backing, which is imminently coming to mainnet, and with which we're still testing and trying to understand how big of a scaling improvement is, but looks like it's around 6 to 8 times than what we had. And that's just running with one core on Polkadot. So the kind of new capabilities called core time on Polkadot enables you to also scale a chain on demand. So as NeuroWeb keeps growing, the community will be able to actually decide upon this and increase scale effectively without the need of the developers, in this case us, to do any form of decision. We can just go ahead and see, okay, it makes sense to grow, so we just add additional cores on Polkadot. So it looks like NeuroWeb can really, really scale tremendously. I'm not sure if Base is able to follow, but also I'm not going to say that the guys are not going to be able to follow, because I think they're doing a really, really good job, especially when it comes to adoption. So can we compare those two? Apples and oranges a little bit maybe, but still time will tell. But I can say NeuroWeb can go really, really, really far in terms of scale.
Gotcha. And then we had one last question that Luku slipped in at the last minute here on YouTube. So I think we can give this one a quick answer, which was sort of a follow-up to actually a previous question. So one batched knowledge asset with 1,000 assets, that'll have the same size as 1,000 knowledge assets before V8?
So I'd say no. Now we can go very deep, but basically the size in terms of kilobytes, like raw size, it will be bigger. How bigger? Depends on what kind of knowledge assets. But at minimum, each of the knowledge assets has a UAL, so an identifier that previously might have not been part of that. So if you had, let's say, 1,000 knowledge assets of one triple, now it's going to be 2,000 triples, so 2 times the size. But if it's going to be like more richer knowledge assets, obviously this one addition, at least the minimum addition of UAL, is going to add something. Also depends on the one creating knowledge assets. The additional component in knowledge asset is to add, if desired, to add vector embeddings. So you can essentially further help annotate what knowledge is in the knowledge asset, not just by adding triples, by literally by adding vectors, which can also increase the size. And then fundamentally, there's going to be additional metadata in the graph itself maintained by the nodes, which basically describe the provenance for knowledge assets, that are also going to add a little bit of overhead. But like, what you should not see it is like one knowledge asset becomes like, we kind of unpacked it as 1,000 different things. Only it's rather 1,000 rich, very highly semantically descriptive entities versus a container, black box with something inside, like a book that, is like a bunch of squiggly words on a page. Rather, it's actually the characters, all of the objects connected in the book in a temporal way. So it's going to be semantically even a different, more powerful thing. And so it's not just a matter of size either. But yeah, I don't know if you want to add something to that, Marko. This is at least like how my brain is tuned to think.
Yeah, not really, I guess. So to put it in a simple way, there'll be a bit more metadata, which is kind of minuscule. If you already had large knowledge assets, it's not a huge percentage increase. And also people at some point in V8 will probably be able to add their vector embeddings, or even that might be done automatically. We're still thinking about it and looking into it. So yeah, I think we now answered it completely.
Very nice. Thank you very much. And that's all the questions. It's my questions. That's the audience questions. So thank you, obviously, to everybody. Let's start with the audience watching at home, listening at home, or at work, in the car, at the gym, ballet class, wherever exactly you're listening to this. Everybody listening afterward on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everywhere else, we thank you very much for tuning in. This has been another episode of the On Trac podcast with your host, Jonathan, OriginTrail co-founder, Branimir, and Trace Labs AI lead, Marko. And again, Marko, thank you so much for joining us. This is your first podcast with us. Hopefully we'll get to have the pleasure of having you back on again in the future. And thank you for the enlightening demonstration that puts sort of, not a face, that's not the right word, but puts a visual element to all the stuff that we talk about here every month at the On Trac podcast.
Yeah, cool. Thank you guys as well for the great discussion. And yeah, I didn't know this is going on Spotify, so that's cool.
Gonna be famous.
Yeah, exactly. Hi, Mom.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Marko. It was a pleasure. Thanks, everybody, for joining. See you next month for the podcast episode number 8.
Stay on track.
See you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
This has been On Trac, brought to you by OriginTrail. If you like what you heard, consider giving the show a follow and leaving a 5-star review. You can keep up to date with OriginTrail on Twitter/X at origin_trail. And you can follow me, your host, at MadDopeMatic. MadDopeMatic. DOPEMADIC. Until next episode, trace on and stay on track.